Hey there my lovelies, and welcome to my booktube channel, The Sassy Library Fox. My name is V, and today I decided to go for a couple of recommendations. I recently talked to my bestie and we spoke about the enemies to lovers trope, and that there are a lot of books who claim to be enemies to lovers, but that there are actually just a couple of books that actually deliver. So a lot of books are pegged to be enemies to lovers, but in the end they turn out to be more or less at first enemies to lovers and then just insta-love. So I decided to go for a different approach this time around. I know a lot of people will probably post their favorite romance books in February, and I know a lot of people will probably talk about their favorite romance tropes, but no, you won't get romance books from me, or not everything I'm going to talk about will be romance books. I came up with 6 books that are perfect enemies to lovers. Some of them are actually romances, but most of them are also in the genre of young adult or classics. So yeah, 6 books. Don't ask me why it are 6, but those 6 were the only ones that came to my mind that I recently read that have that enemies to lovers trope and that I can recommend without hesitation. So without further ado, let's just jump into those 6 books. And I just love the trope of enemies to lovers. I'm a huge fan of it. I always call it the I love to hate you and I hate that I love you trope. So you will get recommendations like that from me. Okay, so let's go to the first recommendation. And the first recommendation is Carry On by Rowell. And I just had to mention that one because it's great, and Baz and Simon are really totally enemies to lovers because they can't stand each other right from the beginning of the book. Simon has really antagonistic thoughts about Baz, and you see they are roommates or should be roommates, but Baz is missing, and Simon constantly thinks about Baz, but in a not so friendly way. And only when the Baz chapters begin, it turns out that there might be more to this sort of relationship. Oh god, I just love Simon and Baz. Simon and Baz are perfect enemies to lovers. If you love LGBTQ plus books, if you love MM books, and some sort of Harry Potter retelling which can stand on its own, because it might sound familiar and it might have familiar tropes, but when it comes down to it, the book definitely, or the series, can stand on its own. So Baz and Simon, definitely enemies to lovers. Alone the thoughts of Baz. Yeah, you will see when you read the book. Okay, so I have no idea why my video suddenly turned off, but never mind. Let's just head to the second book I want to talk about. And the second book I'm going to talk about is a classic, and I'm sure all of you have heard about it before. It's Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen. And honestly, if this book isn't the enemies to lovers trope, then I don't know. What is really interesting about Pride and Prejudice is that it is a classic. So you can say the enemies to lovers trope has been around for ages. Because Jane Austen's Pride and Prejudice is known by a lot of people, it's world literature, and the love story between Elizabeth Bennet and Mr. Darcy is the epitome of enemies to lovers, because at first they both can't stand each other. And Elizabeth, I mean, it's even in the title, Elizabeth doesn't think highly of Mr. Darcy, and she thinks he hates her. And actually we even have the miscommunication trope in here, because they both think that the other doesn't like them, and if that isn't the miscommunication trope per excellence, I don't know. So Pride and Prejudice is definitely an enemies to lovers trope, and a misunderstanding trope to boot. So in that regard, it was actually pretty modern already. And yeah, that is definitely one of the books I can highly recommend, and it's even a classic. So if you haven't read that one yet, this is a perfect enemies to lovers trope. Then the third book I thought about is Tweet Cute by Emma Lord. This book is a lot of fun because it plays in the modern world, and it's about Pepper and Jack. And Pepper and Jack attend the same school, and Pepper is some sort of perfectionist and everything has to be perfect. And next to all her studies and working to get into a good university, she also runs the Twitter account of her mother's company. And Jack is the twin of Ethan. He's kind of in the shadow of his twin brother, because his twin brother is more outgoing and is friendly with everyone. Jack is more the quiet and silent kind of type, and he runs the Twitter account of his parents daily. And one day, the company of Peppa's mom steals the recipe of Jack's family dailies. I think it was from her grandma, a sandwich or something like that. And then a Twitter war starts between them. The interesting thing about this is that they don't know that each other is posting from the Twitter account. So they meet in school all of the time, but they don't know that the other is running the Twitter account for the companies. So once they find that out, there is hell. And it's perfect. It's such a perfect read for enemies to lovers, and it plays in the modern world, and I'm sure a lot of teens and the older generation that is also on Twitter or Instagram will be able to relate. So definitely one recommendation. The next book I'm going to talk about, or rather serious, is The Folk of the Year by Holly Black, and you all know my love for Cardan and for Jude, and if those two aren't the perfect enemies to lovers, I don't know. I mean, they basically live and breathe enemies to lovers and still kind of hate each other. Because I think they just love to hate each other's guts, if I'm quite honest. It starts with the first book and it goes on with the other books. For me personally, this is one of the best enemies to lovers ever, because Jude and Cardan, they don't give each other an inch. Their love is so close to hate that it's so hard to distinguish both. So yes, I totally love those two, and I wish there would be more books like that. And this is definitely in the genre of young adult and fantasy with fairies. So yes, something totally different than Tweet Cute. The next book I'll talk about is The Hating Game by Sally Thorne. And everyone who read The Hating Game knows that Lucy and Josh are at each other's throats all of the time. They work at the same company, even in the same office, and they just can't stand each other. And when their boss is talking about promoting one of them, their rivalry gets even more out of hand. I loved those two so much. They were so great, and alone Lucy's thoughts. Oh god, Lucy's thoughts I had to love so much when I read that book. And I'm just going to give you a quote here because it's hilarious. Those two are hilarious. Here it comes. What are you imagining? Your expression is filthy. Strangling you, bare hands. I can barely get the words out. I'm huskier than a phone sex operator after a double shift. So that's your kink. His eyes are going dark. And I just loved those two. Those two were brilliant. So much fun to read about them and to see their journey from enemies to lovers. And the last book I'm going to talk about is The Captive Prince, or rather it's a series by C.S. Pacat, and it comes with a lot of trigger warnings, actually with a ton. I mean, we have the topics of slavery, we have rape, we have non-consensual moments in here. We have a lot of really dark themes and not easily to digest themes. So if you can't handle things like that, don't pick up the first book. Don't pick up the second or the third. This book is really not for everyone. But I personally think if you made it through the first book, you will love book 2 and 3, because book 2 and 3 are great. This is a totally enemies to lovers trope par excellence, because we have two princes. Yes, it's even we have two princes, Prince Laurent from Vere, and we have Damon from Achielos, and they are both princes from kingdoms that are constantly fighting against each other. And one day Damon's half-brother goes for the throne, and to get his brother out of the way, who would be the actual heir to the throne, he sells him into slavery to Vere, and even worse, to Prince Laurent. So yes, that book has not only quite the trigger warnings, but it's also very full of political intrigues. I loved it about the book and the series in general. So many intrigues, so many court plots and things in the background that will get more important later on in the series. It's perfect. For me, I think once you get through the first book, you will really be able to enjoy book 2 and 3, but this is definitely a series that's not for the faint-hearted. And the things Damon has to endure while he's Laurent's slave are pretty graphic and detailed, so I can really not recommend this to the faint-hearted. But if this is something you're interested in and if you love a really good enemies to lovers trope, and that one in here is really perfect. Once you get to the second book, it's an amazing series. You just have to get through the first one. But if that is your cup of tea and if you like to read books like that, then you can't go wrong with this. If not, just better let it be and don't don't get into it. Don't even start with the first book. So, okay, this said, I'm already at the ending of my video. I hope you enjoyed it. This was a little bit different take on the Valentine's theme. I'm so glad I finally managed to make a themed video. And I saw that I got a lot of new subscribers, so thank you so much for subscribing to my channel. I really appreciate it, and I'm so glad that you seem to enjoy my content. And when I'm already at it, I think I'm not doing this often enough, but if you feel funny, give me a like. If you feel brave, leave me a comment. And if you feel especially bold, you can even click that subscribe button. Okay, let's wrap it up here and go for the finale. Take care, stay healthy and safe, and as always, see you around the next time. Bye!